Hello and welcome to episode 270 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast in all of the internet. My name is Jordan Willis.
My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is Summer Rain.
My name is David Howe.
So it's been a while, so we're going to do a news episode. We're going to just talk about all the different news that happened over the past couple weeks. You know, we got things like Nintendo's financial reports came out, Tears of the Kingdom's players figured out how to get the Unbreakable Master Sword again, and we also got a new trailer for Echoes of Wisdom. Talk about that. But before all that, how's everyone doing?
I'm doing good. So 2 weeks ago, I said, or the last time I was on the show about 2 weeks ago, I said, kid's about to go into a 2-week camp and then start school. And so I'm about to start having a lot of time to work on Monochrome Heights and get back into a routine. But we got COVID that day or the next day, and it took about 2 weeks to recover. So my kid is starting school tomorrow, and I am going to get back on a routine, knock on wood, and get back to work on Monochrome Heights. So that's really all I've been up to is just, I watched a shitload of Olympics.
Hey, what's your favorite sport?
Nice.
That's what I could do. That's what I could handle.
Did you get really good at watching 4 different sports at the same time?
Whenever they would on NBC, I didn't shell out for Peacock. I kind of regret that I didn't. But yes, every once in a while they will show like 4 things at once. And it a little bit felt like I'm living in the future when they would do
I
that.
felt the same way.
Or like Max Headroom or something like.
Yeah, or just like your ADD finally had a home.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Olympics were fun. RIP the Olympics. They're dead now.
Yeah.
I had a pretty good past couple weeks as well. I went to Chicago, Illinois. I just got back last night from Chicago, hung out with Summer. That's right. I took a little trip through the portal in the Tiny Door. If you watched last week's episode, there was a little bit of Tiny Door lore explained at the end of the episode in a post-credits scene. Yeah, it was a really good time. We chilled. I went to a wedding, which was fun. I got to see a whole bunch of friends that I hadn't seen in forever. I got to meet a couple Switch Heads for the first time, IRL. Shout out to Weiss and Robo Lettuce. That was a good time. And then also we had a pretty fun hangout session at this local arcade somewhere. It's called Galloping Ghost, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and it was a super fun time. It was like they have literally 1,000 arcade machines there. Also, we ran into Billy Mitchell there, which was not expected. I walked in and Robo Lettuce was like, oh, by the way, Billy Mitchell was here. And I was like, that's like a pretty funny joke. Good joke. But then he just was there. And it was the whole time we were like, do we get a selfie? Do we call him out on the cheating scandals? Like, what do we do? It was a pretty fun time. It was interesting meeting that supremely weird man as he was, I guess, going for a Pac-Man world record. But good time overall. It was really nice hanging out with you, Summer, and Kyle, and Poop Girl as well. That was really great to see all of you over that week. So thanks a lot for letting me crash at your place.
Yeah, thanks for coming and spending time with us. Yeah, good time was had by all. David covered most of my previous week. The only things that I have to add are the day before David got here, I was working bees with my folks. August is extraction time. So we are going into the yards. We are pulling the excess hives. It's looking really good. Like the honey crop is going to be so good this year. I have this problem where anytime like a big chunk of like wax full of honey, is like on the top and I know it's going to get like scraped off and shoved away anyway, that I pull my glove off and I just pop it in my mouth and, chew that wax like bubble gum. And I'm like, oh God, the honey crop. It's so good this year.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've been doing all right. I was out of town for like a week. My friend went home to Evansville, Indiana, and invited me to go along and hang out with him. So did that for a week, road trip. It was nice to get out of Texas for a little bit. And I thought it would be cooler where we went, but it was rainier and just as hot, but now also muggy, but still had a good time. I saw the Parthenon in Tennessee and Nashville. I have a giant replica of the Parthenon very randomly that they built for the 100th year anniversary of Tennessee. Very strange. Went to Louisville, had to try some of the whiskey, hung out in Evansville, and my friend just showed me like what's up in Evansville, Indiana, which I was very curious to see. I've never been to Indiana. My only experience with Indiana is through the television series Parks and Recreation. So I had to find out if it was real. And
The state?
yeah, both.
Yeah.
Like, and the people. And it's, about what I expect, about 75% true. Yeah. Well, the state is 100%. The people, 75.
Man, we were a bunch of Midwest Switch Headz this past week.
I know, it's weird that you were like so close, but yet still not.
Yeah. We debated going to Chicago, but we had already driven I think it was 15 hours. I say
No. Yeah.
my friend wanted to drive the whole way, and I offered, and so I'm like, okay, I'll just be your co-pilot. But yeah, he was like, Chicago's a little too far. We'll just hang out in Evansville. But so close so far. But yeah.
Right on. Our last 2 episodes were about controllers, and we had a special episode, a debate episode between David and Summer about King K. Rool versus King DDD, which is the best king. And we got lots of great comments on that. We have an official poll on the Discord that is currently tied.
What?
Oh my goodness.
So if you're out there listening and you aren't a member of the Discord, or you are and you haven't voted, help break the tie. Some of the comments we got on Instagram and YouTube include Sprowlix saying crazy episode topic. I love it. Snake Jazz saying the opening music is epic. One of the very few episodes that had a different opening music track.
I really hope NBC debate theme does not sue us. We did not get a copyright takedown, so I think we're in the clear.
Michu, he said, quote from the episode, "We all love a good chemical warfare." And then Alyssa said, "I vote for King K. Rool. We need alternatives to fossil fuels more than ever." There's also a lot of really great discussion on our Discord as well about that episode. And regarding our controllers episode, a lot of love for the GameCube controller, unsurprisingly, in the comments. Molly Phoenix, Sprowlix, and over on YouTube, SRF all mentioned GameCube controller. Anyway, if you're out there and you're listening to this episode and you have any comments on anything we talk about, we'd love to hear them. Post a comment on YouTube or on Instagram or somewhere else. Come join the Discord, be part of the conversation there. We'll try to shout you out. We also have a Patreon. If you want to help support the podcast financially, that is a great place for you to go and become a patron. We appreciate all our patrons. And also, we do this video podcast as well as the audio podcast. So come and hit like and subscribe on YouTube and see our faces. And with that, we're going to get into this giant list of news we've got here. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about Nintendo Switch Online and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. I guess it's technically Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team.
Correct.
Is the full name. And this is now on Nintendo Switch Online for the expansion pack for the Game Boy Advance.
This is an interesting choice because this game was the first spin-off game to have the dual versions like the mainline games do. It was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue, but Red was on the Game Boy Advance and Blue was on the Nintendo DS. So we can only get Red because we're not putting DS games on. Right. We don't have NSO DS yet. And the other thing that I think that's really interesting about this is that we already have the remake of this game sold as a fully priced game on the Switch. So releasing the original where, to my understanding, there really weren't that many quality of life updates in the remake. The gameplay is pretty much identical. So
I forget. We did a whole episode on it, but I don't remember.
It was rough, y'all. Not for me. Not for me.
Yeah. I love these games, but I certainly didn't shell out for the remake because I was like, well, I still own the original. And to my understanding, it's pretty much the same. So why would I pay $60 for something that and now you definitely don't have to because here it is. But it's an interesting choice though.
Have fun, y'all. I mean, anything but a mainline Pokemon game. That sounds great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Pokemon Company.
True.
It's true. It's strange that this is a game that already had a remake. They've done this before, I guess, with Link's Awakening, right? They brought the Game Boy Color version after the remake had already been on the Switch, but it makes me think that they might do this for more stuff, like I wouldn't be surprised to see like Mario versus Donkey Kong, like the original version come out on NSO now, which would be, again, just as baffling as this. But either way, it's nice, especially for people that did not buy the remake to have this in its original form. And Game Boy Advance games just aged really well graphically and look really good on the Switch. So I'm not really complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Moving along to, unfortunately, discussing more layoffs. Every time this happens, I think surely you can't fire and close more studios and fire more developers, but yet it continues to happen. So just to give this some explanation, Bungie, which has already had rounds of layoffs that we have discussed over the last year or two, had another round of layoffs that just happened. A significant amount, actually. They announced they were laying off 220 employees and that they're also moving around employees to other companies that are owned by Sony. And so it's a big restructuring yet again over at Bungie. So that's sort of the big one.
Yeah. I don't really know what to say to this. I mean, this is devastating. Whenever the first round of layoffs happened at Bungie, I immediately went online to see if my friends had been laid off and they had survived. And then pretty much every single one of my friends that had survived got laid off in this round, So this was a very sweeping layoff, right? And it's not looking good for the company. I know Destiny is taking a big backseat and they're really slowing down development right now. Not super surprising. I mean, I don't know how long the growth of that game could really sustain itself, but yeah, this is really devastating to see, especially after, they were already kind of working on fumes, right?
I feel like the weirder part of this is they're moving about 40 employees to a new sub studio under Sony. And it makes me curious, what they're going to have those 40 people working on in addition to the 155 they already took. So there's a new studio and then they also just poached employees from there. The whole thing just feels really strange. But I mean, Sony spent $4 billion on this. I guess they can do whatever they want with the company, but it doesn't feel good at all. It's it's not like these games are not making money. They're still making money. Destiny's made a ton of money. So I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't bode well for the future. Maybe this might be a new war ground for unionization in video games. It's the only thing I can think, because Bungie is a large company even with the 220 employees. That was 17% of their workforce, which means they have quite a few employees that might not take well to this in the long run.
It sounds like you bringing that up makes it sound like this was an attempt at union busting by letting go that many employees.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. I know, it doesn't feel good having had Sony. It's reminding me of Microsoft laying off or closing studios, right? And we'll talk about some of that here in just a little bit. But a lot of this makes me think it's Sony. But also, there's been a lot of criticism thrown at Pete Parsons, the CEO of the company, who is apparently a classic car collector and owns something like 13 classic cars, and you could see exactly how much he paid for all of them at auction, which is a lot of money. And it's just terrible look, again, it's CEOs that made off really, really well when they sold their company. And then they're always the last ones that are affected by stuff like this. Right. So just kind of a terrible time all around.
We don't have to spend a lot of time talking about these, but a couple of other closures that we're aware of that just kind of suck to hear about is developer Ready at Dawn, who's been owned by Meta, making VR games for the last while, but has been around for 20 some years, making a variety of games before that acquisition.
Yeah. Ready at Dawn had made, I first heard of them whenever they made the Wii port specifically for Okami, which added the motion controls, which is really cool. It was actually the first time how I played Okami. I didn't beat it then. I finally beat it later on. But anyway, that was pretty cool. And then they also made an original IP game. It was called The Order 1886 for Sony, a Victorian style game. And I want to say it was not super well received, but I have recently seen people be reassessing the game.
It's got a resurgence. I think people
yeah.
hated it because it was like 5 hours long or like shorter or something like that. And now everybody's like super hard for short games, you know? So it's people are into it now.
Myself included. And I'm like, should I pick up a PS4 and play this? And then in the VR realm, whenever they were acquired by Meta, they started making games. Echo VR was like kind of like one of their major games, I guess. And then like Lone Echo 2 and Echo Arena were and Echo Combat. So there's this whole, I personally don't have a VR, so I've not played these games, but that was like what they were known for in the meta world.
And just real briefly, Shipyard Games, which is a mobile developer of the game Go City, has closed as well after 7 years. After their investment, they had a big investment from Supercell, has gone away or dried up or is not returning, which is another story we've heard a lot in some of these smaller studio closures and things. So, and I also feel like we think maybe mobile's being hit as bad, but there's one example right there. And that wasn't all the things that got shut down recently. Not exactly a studio, but Game Informer, which is the magazine that's run by GameStop currently. And apparently, at least according to some things, is the longest running gaming magazine. I think it started like in the 90s and then went away for a little while and they brought it back, right?
I think they like stopped printing it and then they eventually started
digital.
printing it again. Yeah.
Gotcha. So that's why it was weird to hear longest running and then that fact, but that makes sense if it was digital. Yeah.
It was certainly one of the only ones that was still going on to this day.
Yes.
You know, like all the other ones had long since discontinued.
So that has been shut down. And I think it was the June issue now, which is the final issue. The July issue, which as I understand it was like being made did not come out, will not come out. No more Game Informer, which is a pretty, big thing to have been around for that long.
Fuck GameStop for doing
Seriously.
this. And the way that they did this was absolute horseshit. Really pissed me off. I mean, this just happened one day. They were like, Game Informer's gone. And it was like, what? Okay. No lead up. Nobody working at Game Informer knew anything about this. This is entirely a GameStop decision as they own Game Informer at this point, and have for the past couple decades, I believe. And not only that, I mean, they completely nuked the website, website. I mean, because I was in a recent issue of Game Informer. I was quoted in a Ribbon article after a guy reached out to me. So as soon as this happened, I wanted to go archive that article on the website. So I went to go and find it, and it was just, you couldn't access it. Right. Yep. And then what was it? I think somebody went to the Game Informer Twitter account to complain. And then GameStop just shut down the entire Twitter account, So it's pretty much there was zero thought put into anyone's livelihoods, anyone's collection of work from the decades of journalists that have used that website. But on top of that, fans, it's just an archive of history, of articles and memories and people having had this website and magazine be a part of their lives, just flushed down the drain pretty much overnight. This really, I mean, not that I was a huge GameStop fan before this, but I am happy to never shop at GameStop again. This is definitely general boycott worthy for me of GameStop as a company. And to be honest, if they, I don't know, I don't want people to lose their jobs, but it's you do stuff like this, it really shows how out of touch you are. And you truly don't have gamers or the industry's best interest at heart.
Yeah. Because now all of those, like you said, all those journalists, they can't even use the work that they made to try to get new jobs. And wasn't there something about how Game Informer had exclusivity publicity rights with the new Dragon Age game? So that just got tanked. Right? There's so many things that just weren't thought through with this.
Yeah, I mean, and then the new issue was already 70% done from what the staffers report. So it literally was just, okay, bye. And on the Twitter, someone had taken to the actual official notice from GameStop felt very just generic and kind of disingenuous. It didn't feel like it was written with any care for the people that worked for this company. And when someone took to Twitter to write a real one because it's a company run by fucking journalists who know how to write, then that's when GameStop decided to nuke the Twitter. It's like, dude, you could have had someone write something at least halfway decent if you had just given people a heads up, like instead of just completely nuking it. And then, just from an archival perspective is just disgusting. Like, I'm with you, David. I'm kind of like, okay, I think I'm good. I don't think I ever need to go back into a GameStop. I don't see why I would.
Only Funko Land from now on.
I guess we do have one more bit of bad news here. ROMhacking.net. They are going to be news only.
Well, ROMhacking.net has been around for 2 decades.
Okay.
It started as a forum, I believe. It eventually became like a repository of ROM hacks, right? So that's fan translations, color hacks, stuff like that. A lot of these that were hosted on ROMhacking.net were not actual ROMs themselves. It was like the patch files, that you would need in order to apply patches and hacks to different ROMs and stuff like that. But I'm forgetting exactly the reason why it was shut down, but it was some sort of like forum drama, as I understand. And I think the person running the website was just like, I'm tired of having to deal with like constant toxicity and shit like that. And so I'm just giving it all up basically to the Internet Archive, putting everything up on there. And honestly, can't really blame someone for not wanting to deal with something anymore. I kind of wish that it was more of a passing on the duties of this website onto someone else instead of just shutting it down, because romhacking.net is a great repository and a really good hub for all of these sort of fan created projects. I'm sure something else will pop up in its place, but this is definitely the end of an era when it comes to kind of fan created content online.
I feel like as like the opposite though of Game Informer, like they did this in a more like public, long blog post style way. They uploaded everything to the Internet Archive.
Yes.
Like that is how you shut something down. That's how you wind something down, is you archive it and move on. Like I just think this is a better example of like what Game Informer could have done. And honestly, GameStop has the money to do something like that. This is a like very grassroots style effort, and they were able to do it. So like, why isn't someone like GameStop with all that money able to do something similar? Yeah.
In what is maybe a little bit of good news, to follow up on all of this closures and what have you, is that Tango Gameworks, which was the studio that made Hi-Fi Rush among some other notable games, they were closed by Microsoft despite their success at making a critically received game. And, we all thought they were just going to be left for dead, but apparently they have been purchased by Krafton, which is a South Korean publisher. So hopefully that will be a good thing. I'm just wary of everything, I guess. So but at least Tango Gameworks lives. So
let's take the dub on this one. I mean, this is good news in what has been a sea of bad news throughout the industry. This was very surprising. It was good to see. It's also heartening that Microsoft was working with Krafton to like move all the IP over, and that they've said that they're actively going to be continuing the IP of Hi-Fi Rush under this new publishing arm. So, I don't like to see cattle trading like this because, anybody can fucking shoot a cow in the head, it doesn't matter who owns it. Right. But it's, at the same time, it is better that this is, that a lot of the people that were working here seemingly will continue to have their jobs, and all the fans of Hi-Fi Rush have something that they can look forward to, and that Krafton sees the value in this IP, something that Microsoft was not able to do.
Moving on to a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. Well, Nintendo has, at least in Japanese, put out a website for the sort of weekly challenges where you can see the top winner of these challenges. Somewhat interesting, at least, what was this? The one a couple of weeks ago included the Donkey Kong glitch to get the fastest time, which, Nintendo is notoriously not a fan of promoting glitches in their games, but maybe when they're that old and the glitches are that baked in, there's nothing they can do.
It's like, I don't think they care so much about glitches. Like, I mean, they like at least in the original Mario Brothers, like Super Mario Brothers, like they showed off that stuff back in the day, and it was like well-known secrets and whatever, right? But I think specifically for this game, they disallowed it, right? So if you try to do like the clip into the wall trick in the original Super Mario Brothers to get the speedrun tactic or whatever, they don't let you do it. The game is like, you can't do that, and rewinds you. You know what I mean? So the fact that this glitch was not caught and also just was broadcast out to everyone as like, here's the fastest time, made a lot of people, myself included, pretty fucking bitter, to be honest. It was like, I was like, what the fuck, man? Because I grinded that one, man. I like tried really hard to get the best time on that. It's just to have someone beat me by like 10 whole seconds. So I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I don't know. I wonder if they'll patch that or something. But either way, it's cool that this site is up. I wish it was in English. And who knows how long they actually keep updating this. But it's a cool little website. It's like a little web version of watching the best times, right?
Yeah, I was just looking at it, and it's in Japanese, so it's hard for me to tell, but I actually don't see the last week on there. So
maybe it was just that first week. They got enough pushback.
It's got 2 weeks on there, and that's it. I don't know. So yeah, in theory, that would be cool if they kept doing it and might help the game, and if they put it in English. But anyway, we'll move on to some Tetris 99 news. And I was worried this might not time out well for our podcast, but it's going to. The newest Tetris 99 event is a cross with Splatoon 3's Side Order DLC, and that's going to be taking place August 16th through 20th, where you can get your Splatoon Side Order skin for Tetris 99 in this 42nd Maximus Cup. So Tetris 99 continues to get this support, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I love Tetris 99, man. I play the game all the time still. I don't know why I turned that into a song. Yeah, I don't know. It's exciting. Side Order was really good. Also, Patrick, have you played it yet?
No, I have not.
What the literal fuck is going on with you? What is your problem? You're like Mr. Splatoon.
He's not
anymore,
into the
y'all.
single player.
Also, I am really, we'll talk about it here in a second. This is a great segue, actually. So there was a Splatoon Splatfest this past weekend. It was the carbs fest of bread versus rice versus pasta. And I did not play because I am trying to break my literal addiction to Splatoon. And I have not played Splatoon 3 in now a month or longer. I'm happy. I'll come back for that grand festival, but anyway,
I just can't believe you'll never have played Side Order. It's so good. You would love it. It would reinvigorate your love for single player games. I'm mad.
It is different, right? Like it's different from what the modes that you're addicted to. I feel like that alone, you should give yourself an allowance.
Well,
it's like a mocktail.
Patrick, stay strong.
We'll see. Maybe I'll try it at some point. I don't
Unbelievable.
know. But of note for the news here,
everyone cyberbully Patrick into playing the Side Order DLC.
The winner of the Splatfest was Rice, which makes sense to me.
Is this the first Splatfest that nobody on Switch Headz played?
Maybe ABK did
playing,
but
no, I mean like on the show right now.
Oh yeah, the four of us. Yeah, no.
Oh yeah,
that's probably true because I didn't play the last one either, but before that I probably played all of them. So
I'll definitely play. I'll play the next. I'll play the next one.
We're gonna have to.
Yeah, it's like the
final
one,
right?
Yeah.
We have to play the next one.
Yeah. This would have been fun for us to play in person though. Summer.
I thought about it and then we didn't do it. So
yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, that big grand festival is happening about a month from now in September 13th or so. But we'll move away from Splatoon to talk about Zelda for a little bit. So this is a big one. We got a new, pretty significant trailer for the upcoming new Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom game, which was called Traversing Hyrule. In addition to that, which we should break down, there's like a little bit of additional information on websites and that can be gleaned from like images and stuff. So it was kind of a big info drop for this game. What did y'all think about this trailer? It was a pretty meaty trailer.
I mean, this game is looking better every time I see it. You know, it's also looking more like Breath of the Wild every time I see it, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think a top-down Breath of the Wild style Zelda game where you play as Zelda is pretty fucking cool. You know, I like the idea of that. I continually have more questions.
Yep.
Every time I see it too. You know, like, is this game going to be challenging? Is this game, you know, because it kind of just seems like you can play it however you want. So if I can just brute force my way through it, is it going to be fun? Is it going to even feel like Zelda? You know, it's stuff like that where I guess it's doing its job, because all of these questions seem like things that can only be answered by actually playing the game or like reading reviews, which I assume will probably be glowing, you know? So we'll just have to see, but it definitely has piqued my interest, and I will be picking up this game whenever it comes out.
Yeah, I don't need to see anything else. Like, I'm good. I mean, I was good at the first trailer, but after this, I definitely probably will stay away from any other info drops. I don't really want to be ruined. I want to be completely surprised. But this one in particular was giving me Scribblenauts vibes. Because I remember when I first played Scribblenauts, you could like write anything and then it'd appear on the screen. I was like, this is crazy. How is this possible? This is a really crazy idea for a game. And this kind of is like giving that same type of vibe where like there's so many different ways to solve different puzzles.
Yeah.
And I just like putting that freedom in our hands is like really exciting. So yeah, again, I'm like, dude, I'm good. I'm sold. I don't need to see anything else. Really excited.
Scribblenauts is a really funny way to view this comparison. You know, it looks interesting, but yeah, who knows, man? I mean, I have faith in the team. It's like, when have they ever made a bad Zelda game? You know?
Yeah, I think there is the question of difficulty, right? But I also think that maybe where it solves itself is that it's just so fun to find all the different ways to do things that even if it's not challenging, you're still having a lot of like creative fun. And then maybe that's what it's going to be more of. We'll find out. Right. So yeah, this showed off a couple new abilities, and that's what we haven't really like broken into them, but like where, you know, there was maybe the concern early on that it would just be you make little copies of everything. We learned about 2 new abilities, right?
One was like copying movement of something of an object, or an object moves the same way as you move.
Right. It was like a big ass boulder that you can like move by moving your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's it's got more
smoothies. You can make smoothies.
Yeah, which is sort of like the cooking element.
Oh, they also did show off too. You can change Zelda's outfit, which I really like, because I wasn't like a huge fan honestly of just the hood. Like, I wouldn't want to just look at like the blue triangle of the hood top down the entire time. So actually being able to like see her hair, change her like style a little bit, I think is going to like make it more interesting. I don't know. I'm just a big fan of outfits in games, as I think we all are. You know, my hope is, especially with this is the first game where you can play as Zelda, and I think you touched on this in a previous episode, Summer, but it's like, you know, we got a Peach game this year, but it was like very easy and silly, and it was about playing dress up. And here we've got a game where you play as Zelda, and it looks like it's breaking the formula and might be a little bit easier maybe. So it's like, I just kind of hope that like this trend isn't like, we're giving the girls their games, but they're all like super like simple personally. But
the other thing I think that this trailer and also reading and seeing some of the screenshots and stuff makes me feel like is that it's going to be a decently sized game. Maybe not even in terms of map, but just in terms of things to do. It just seems like there's a lot of little side quests, and like they really put an emphasis on the different races, and they're bringing back the old Zora, and that's like a different variation of Zoras. And there's going to be, so I'm hoping that even if there's just going to be a lot to explore. And then there's also what looks like, you know, and we don't want to know about it maybe, right? Like, cause we've seen enough, maybe it's some sort of second world that Zelda traverses into in the end of this that might be like a dark world kind of thing or something. Who knows? That's me guessing. But so I'm kind of wondering if this game might be a little bigger than like Link's Awakening.
I hope
the
so.
Obvious like comparison.
That's a Game Boy game. This game has got to be bigger than a fucking OG Game Boy game.
Yeah, but like significantly, right? Because I mean, that's the instant mental connection I make. But I think the trailer makes it feel like it is. Like there's a lot of regions and things. So we'll find out. But we can, unless anybody else has anything on that, we can move on to another bit of Zelda news, which is that Tears of the Kingdom players have apparently discovered how to have an unbreakable Master Sword. I haven't like read a lot about this, Jordan. Can you explain this or no?
No, I cannot explain how it's done. I watched about 20 to 30 minutes of the video. It's an hour-long explanation video of how to do this glitch, and it involves a bunch of other glitches. And my eyes kind of glazed over because I didn't understand how all this was possible and how any even collection of humans could figure this out. But it's pretty impressive to watch the work of like the community just come together and figure out how to break this game again. And like just showing that the community and the glitching community is still alive was like really fun to watch. But yeah, the video is like super technical, and the breakdown video I watched was like very good. And I feel like I could eventually do this. I'm not going to take the time to do it, but it's cool because this was a glitch that was at the very early beginning of the game, but Nintendo eventually patched it out. They might patch this out. I don't really know if it's possible because it involves so many steps. But yeah, man, really fun to watch. I love just seeing the community come together and figure out the things that are not meant to be figured out.
We'll keep moving on then. And that is that a Switch exclusive game, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is sort of the spiritual successor to Goemon, right? The game's title might be a little bit more lengthy than this, but Bakaru is how I'm seeing it referred to. It's got like a longer name, right?
Yeah,
David, you're not.
I'm smiling because of your Romanized. Sorry, I've been doing a lot of Duolingo Japanese, so it's a Bakaru. No, but anyway, no. The full title is Otogi. The full title is Otogi Katsu Geki Mameda no Bakaru Oracle Saitoru no Sainan. So if you ever wanted to know the full title, that's that. But no, you're totally right. This is kind of a spiritual successor to the Goemon franchise. Mystical Ninja Goemon is a very beloved franchise that has been around for a very long time within the Nintendo universe. There was a great N64 game, and then obviously there was a bunch of Super Nintendo games and since, right? So the fact that it's not exactly in that world, but it looks very similar and it's got a similar style. It was Japanese only for a very long time. It was in all these Nintendo Directs. Nobody really knew if it was coming or not, but I think it was an Australian ratings board leak that made us know that it's coming and getting localized, which is really exciting. A lot of people have been looking forward to it for a long time, myself included. I'm really glad that I held off on buying the Japanese version because it did seem like there was a lot of text and it would be more fun to play when I could understand what's going on. So I'm very pumped that this is happening. And then it's also done by Goodfeel as well, are the developers of this game, who obviously made Yoshi's Crafted World, Kirby's Epic Yarn, and the recent Princess Peach Showtime. So they're a bunch of really great developers, and I really enjoy all of their games. In fact, I think Princess Peach Showtime might be my least favorite of their games, and I still really enjoyed that game as well. So I'm pumped to finally be able to play this.
All right, so next up, QuakeCon happened. id Software, creators of Doom, as well as Quake. But a lot of the news out of that was Doom related. And, there's the new Doom, the Dark Ages game that's coming and all that. But of note, perhaps to our listeners, people who play Switch, the Doom ports for the Switch are getting an update. There is sort of a surprise update coming for Doom and Doom 2, which has new content as well as like enhancements and things. Yeah. There's like a whole new campaign, a bunch of new maps for
a new soundtrack.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's so random. I'm like, Okay. I did end up downloading this just to check it out and see what's up. And like, because originally it's like you have Doom 2, that's two separate titles. This is both in one, but then the browser has like the official chronology of releases of like expanded content in the Doom universe, including like Sigil. And then they had a new episode called Legacy of Rust, which was designed by id, Night Dive Studios, and Machine Games, who all had worked on these ports as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like interesting to see them just be like, oh yeah, by the way, we want to just make a whole new like campaign. And then I think one of the cooler parts is like, haven't tried it yet, but there's online deathmatch that has like cross-platform co-op, and then also cross-platform co-op and cross-platform like deathmatch. So like that's sick to have like online Doom back. But the one reason I really downloaded it was because they added like a mod browser within the client. So this is a separate client than the other ones. So I was really curious because Doom has historically had some licensed content within the mods. And so I'm like, dude, am I going to be able to play like a Mario version of Doom on my Switch? And absolutely not. The browser feature is not on the Switch, but like I was seeing that on the Xbox and probably the PC, there is a browser like option to where you can search through all the mods. Just really cool to see them continue to support this game this far along in its life cycle, or not even a life cycle. It's been multiple tens of decades. Anyway, whatever words.
Yeah.
All right.
I do think that like Doom 1 and Doom 2 and Doom 64 on the Switch are like must-haves, I think. Like I like boomer shooters, but my love for that starts from the original Doom. Like these are games that are like so no frills, so easy to pick up and play. And now is like the best time to do it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just really cool that they've been doing all these updates, and everybody who owned the original games when they were like $5 on the eShop. I'm actually not sure if they still are $5 on the eShop or if they've increased the price now that they've like added to them. But like everybody who owned the games originally also get all these updates and everything, right? So this is just like another example of how amazing Night Dive Studios is, because they're the ones that are implementing all this stuff. They put so much care into every single fucking release they do. And the fact that they're still updating this all this time later, I just love it so much. They're one of my favorite studios out there.
Well, we're going to move along on this news march to the fact that the country of Turkey has banned Roblox. So as part of the announcement of this ban on Roblox, the quote was that it is being banned, quote, due to content that could lead to the exploitation of children. And then there's a bit of a longer statement about all that. But this is the first country that has banned Roblox to my knowledge. I mean, maybe it's not allowed in other countries, but that had it and has now banned it at least. We haven't like talked a lot about Roblox, and I don't personally know tons about it. All my knowledge is sort of anecdotal of other parents telling me about bad experiences their kids have had with Roblox. And so I've always tried to steer my kid away from it. Not that he's ever really, but occasionally I've watched him watching a YouTube Roblox video and I'm like, maybe don't. Or something like that. But anyway, not to make this about me. Anybody have any thoughts about Turkey banning Roblox?
I think this is pretty based by Turkey, aka a turkey baster.
Whoa.
But I was thinking of how to best word that the entire time you were talking. So sorry if I repeat something that you said because I was in my own world. But I did see a video on Twitter of like literal children taking to the street and protesting this in Turkey, which I found to be pretty fucking humorous. But yeah, man, Roblox sucks. I think that, this might come undone eventually, but if it doesn't, it's just funny. And at least it's like showing that there are like actual governmental entities out there that are like, yo, let's not maybe fuck with kids like this. You know what I mean? So hopefully, if nothing else, this sets an example going forward of like what not to do with your game design to make stuff predatory towards children.
Yeah. As somebody who doesn't have children, but loves to advocate for children, and anytime I, make new friends who have young children but aren't necessarily gamers, and I'm like, hey, have you talked to your kid? Have you talked to your kid about Roblox? Like, have you like, are we like, cause that's something that I'm immediately like, hey, I want to make sure that you know that this is like a thing you shouldn't let your kid do. So great to see this.
While this is a pretty just and good ban, Turkey has banned other platforms in some.
Even a wrong clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, it's like some other more questionable ways. Like recently, Instagram was banned for like, I think it was like 9 days. And they just brought it back and then for no reason.
They just put it in timeout.
They banned it for alleged censorship related to like Gaza stuff there, and then like 9 days later kind of unceremoniously unbanned it. Maybe there was some internal communications, and in fact relatedly, like Roblox has said they will try to work with Turkey to bring it back. Which I don't know what that means, but like ideally it would be something like they stop exploiting kids. But the Borderlands movie came out since we last did a podcast, and it has done pretty poorly at the box office. It had 8.8 million domestic opening, which sounds like a lot of money, but I think that the budget for this movie was in the hundreds of million, like 100 plus million estimated at least. So that's probably not a very good opening what they were hoping for, and it just kind of sounds not good based on what I've read and heard about it.
My friends I was chatting with last night that are big Borderlands fans said that it's not even bad in a fun way.
Yeah. No. Yeah, 8.8 million is about as bad an opening for a big box office movie for a Hollywood movie as you can get. It's pretty fucking abysmal. I mean, it's not the worst of all time opening, and there's like a chance that globally it could do better because I think it's only out domestically. But boy, howdy, did this movie look terrible from the very beginning. I never had any faith in this thing. I'm very happy. I'm not happy to see that it's reviewing poorly, but I'm happy to know that my instincts still have some merit. And also it was in development hell for like so long.
Yeah.
So much so that like everybody in the movie that's like currently in it, like all the big actors that are like have like since become like Academy Award winners or nominees, like since the time they shot it, and would never have done that movie if it was, actually shot like 2 years ago or whatever, like a normal movie turnaround. But
except Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart still would have done it.
Kevin Hart would have absolutely still done it. Yeah.
And I think it's hard to figure out who wrote it too, because like changed a bunch of different hands, and they're using a pseudonym as the writer is. So there you go.
Rough, dude. I feel like a good comparison is like the Deadpool and Wolverine movie came out with a $211 million domestic opening, which is, I think, if not the best, one of the best of all time. So it's like,
it's the best R-rated opening of all time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this movie was really supposed to be R, then it was PG-13, then it's dealt with a bunch of different directors, like 10 years of making a movie. Hey, guess what? Sometimes you can work on something for 10 years and it's really, really bad still. Anyway.
Yeah. Duke Nukem Forever also comes to mind. Back in the video game world. That's another development hell project. It's like if it's falling apart constantly and you just keep sticking Band-Aids on it, maybe that's a sign to just let that sleeping dog die. But I'm glad to see that we're still also making bad video game movies. For a while, I was like, oh, wow, I guess every video game movie is going to be good now. And no, it's a movie that would make you a bowl proud.
Well, while we're talking about video game adaptations, there was a big leak of Netflix anime and animated shows, including Arcane, the second season of Arcane, the League of Legends show that was very well received. It was a really big leak, not just of that, but a bunch of other anime and animated shows, and that's unfortunate. Apparently, it's a post-production company that was involved in dubbing anime that was, maybe not responsible for the leak, but where the leak is originating from. And I know this sucks for people who make things, because it's just like anytime a big video game leaks early or anything, there's a plan for marketing, and maybe these aren't even the final things you're looking at. And it, I don't know. It just kind of sucks when you hear stuff like this.
Yeah, I had a question. So, like, since it's the dubbing company that's making like the voiceovers for all the different countries, are these like pretty complete versions of the animation? And I'm asking this specifically to David as someone a bit of an industry insider. Is that like one of the last
Sure.
processes?
Yeah, I've got insight on this, and I think I can say this without getting fired. Yeah, absolutely. It's always weird when you like finish production on a show because you're like, great, it can come out now, it's done. But there's all this back end shit that like the streamer or the platform or the distributor or whatever they are needs to do. One of them, especially in the era of streaming, is dubbing, localization, all this different kind of stuff, right? And they can't do that until everything is fucking locked and finalized, right? If you make one little change early on in an episode, then that's going to have cascading effects throughout everything, right? So, at least on an episode by episode basis, right? So absolutely, these probably were full completed episodes just sitting, waiting for release. And this is like one of the last steps, like before things go out. I do know that almost the entirety of Terminator Zero I think the entirety of that show was leaked. Ranma 1/2, it wasn't all of the episodes of the new remake series, but almost all of them were leaked. You could find all this stuff on like 4chan, which I wouldn't recommend wading through that cesspool of a website unless you absolutely have to in order to find it. And also, you probably should just wait until the stuff comes out to watch it as well. But yeah, this is scary. And it's certainly like at our studio, we were like, are we good? Did anything happen? And it's just like, you always like hope you're not the reason for the leak also in stuff like this. It's like whenever we found out, because it's a bunch of Netflix shit, right? And all of our shows go to Netflix, and it was like, where did this come from? And it's like, oh, it's from the like dubbing and localization company. We're like, whew, okay, we're good. It's not like Netflix servers or whatever that were hacked. So it's a scary time, and I'm glad I could finally be an actual insider on something instead of just talking out my ass like I've been doing for about 270 episodes of this podcast.
Plus specials.
That's great. We'll move on to some financial news, and that is that Nintendo had their quarterly financial report. This was out on August 2nd, and I believe it goes through the end of June, if I'm not mistaken. So, as always, they show us the sort of total number of Switches sold because it gets updated on their hardware sales page. And we are looking at 143.42 million Switches sold. Still a little bit shy of the Nintendo DS, which is 154 something, and the PlayStation 2, which is a little more than that, like right at 155 or so. I actually don't have that number in front of me, but it's something like that.
The PlayStation 2 is 160.
160. Okay, even higher than I said. So, yeah. So ways to go to beat both of those. But still a lot of Switches out there sold. And I don't know if there's anything on that y'all want to talk about. They update the software list, and there's some other little sales figures we can talk about. Yeah, well, I don't know that there's anything big shakeups on the top 10 software list. It's still that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sitting there at 62.9 million units sold, which is a lot. Not quite half of Switches, but close.
Yeah, I've got something to say about the hardware here, and it's that it's certainly slowing. This is definitely the biggest slowdown and mellowing of Switch units and software sales in the entirety of the Switch's lifespan, which is not surprising at all. And what's surprising is that it took this long for everything to start slowing, right? This is not anything that we should be like, oh my God, is Nintendo in a bad way? Blah, 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 blah. It's just like we're hitting, or we're at least nearing, peak saturation, right? Yeah, market saturation on who is actually going to be buying this thing, right? It also kind of shows that despite a much stronger than anticipated 2024 in terms of software titles actually being released, wasn't enough to stymie this slowing. this is kind of what we thought was going to be happening at the beginning of the year. And then we were like, oh shit, actually the direct was pretty fucking hype. You know what I mean? And there's a lot more stuff coming. You know, granted, these numbers are as of June, right? So there's still definitely a lot of time left in the year, and a lot of new things were hyped up at that direct, right? And I do think that we're still within reach of the PlayStation 2, but at this rate, I think it does bring into question on whether or not this will pass the sales of the lifetime sales of the Nintendo DS or the PS2. I think, you know, the Switch will probably continue to sell even after the Super Switch or Switch successor comes out.
Yep.
But at what rate is in question. It'd be great. Obviously, I think Nintendo really wants that number one spot, but at the same time, I think that I don't know how much longer they want to really delay this thing, you know, from coming out, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to become a problem if they really try to wring all the sales out just for the arbitrary top slot of best-selling consoles of all time. It doesn't really seem like a Nintendo thing to do. I could like see them coming in like an extremely close second and never making it over the top.
Yeah.
And then maybe, who knows, in 20 years they'll sell a Nintendo Switch Classic and it'll put it over the top. But yeah, it's hard to say.
Well, what I also think is interesting is like this perceived desire, like us perceived desire of theirs to get that number one spot while it's still like the active system, because I don't think the PlayStation 2 and the DS became those numbers while they were the active system in their respective categories. I don't think the PS2 hit that number before the PS3 came out. The PS2 continued to sell while the PS3 was out. The Nintendo DS continued to sell once the 3DS was revealed and was out. So I don't to try to get the Switch to hit that number before its successor comes out, I don't think is realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other interesting thing too is just software sales are completely different on the Switch. So this got me curious of like, what is the top selling game on PS2? And it's Grand Theft Auto San Andreas with 17.33 million copies. The number 10 game on Nintendo's list has 17.61 million copies sold. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, the hardware alone, sure, whatever, that's a number, but like the software sales speak for themselves.
That's a great point. The Switch has been far and away the highest software seller of any game system of all time, right? And I think that you can really truly attribute to the merging of the two, the handheld and the console pillars, right? I think something else that's interesting to look at, and something that you really see over time with these graphs and these trends, is that Nintendo consoles have been trending down over like home console sales. Mm-hmm. Looking at like the beginning of time with like the NES and whatever, like and the Super NES, and just like the market saturation and everything like we were talking about, they were always at the top. And the consoles have been steadily trending down, with the exception of the Wii U, obviously, which had a big bump. But that was kind of its own thing in a way. But the handhelds had held, right? And so it's like, you really just see why they made this decision to like make those two pillars combined. And it's probably the best move they ever made. And it really makes me think too, that it's just like, we're kind of done with the era of Nintendo coming out with a new console that has a new gimmick. I would be very fucking surprised to see the next system be anything more than just like a new iPhone style version of the Switch. You know, it really does feel, looking at these numbers, looking where we're at in the history of the company, that we're just in this new era of Nintendo, you know? And I don't know, we've talked about this so much on this podcast, but I think it's really exemplified by this data.
Just real quickly too, the Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door, and Luigi's Mansion 2, kind of on this same note, have both sold over 1 million units since their release, and they both released in this quarter that we're talking about here of April through June. And I think that Princess Peach Showtime also hit over 1 million units. It came out in the previous quarter, but sort of late in that quarter. So just shows, like y'all are saying that, right? Like the software is really moving, and like those numbers kind of seem small, like for like to just over 1 million, but it's still like a huge amount of sales for a game, right? And like Luigi's Mansion 2, right? Like, I mean, that, I
Yeah.
think we haven't talked about it. None of us, but it's out there making good sales. So,
Most game studios, it would be over the moon to have 1 million sold. Most games do not hit that milestone. And the Nintendo Switch has like 70 games like that.
Oh.
It's wild.
Right. Like it's probably easier to count the first party games that didn't. Maybe not, but anyway. Also, just kind of a little interesting fact that was of note is that Breath of the Wild sold more units in this quarter than Tears of the Kingdom did. So
now, why'd that happen?
I don't know why that happened.
Why'd that happen?
But I think it just also points to some of these big games sticking around, like Mario Kart, and like people continuing to either buy Switches or and then buy these games or, buy the ones they missed out on. And with this sticking around so long,
maybe people were like, oh, I'm done with Tears of the Kingdom, but I actually only got a Switch to play Tears of the Kingdom. Let's go back to Breath of the Wild. That's the only thing I can really think to like push those sales.
Nah, I mean, I think it's an evergreen title. We talked about this. We had a listener question once that was like, do I buy Tears of the Kingdom or do I get Breath of the Wild and play that first? And I think ultimately we were like Tears of the Kingdom, but it was a debate. You know what I mean? And I think if you have to ask yourself that question and you know that the first game is lauded and for over 7 years before Tears of the Kingdom came out, it's been on every single must buy list when you're looking at the titles of everything. And there's 7 years of articles being like, if you're going to buy any game, one of them should be Breath of the Wild. People are just going to get that. It's easier. It's simpler. It sets everything up for the sequel. You know what I mean? And people just don't want to play a sequel to a game that they haven't played the first game of so often. Right. So that's not surprising to me. But it is just fucking funny, that it continues to sell. Yeah.
Our next little bit of news is related to this. And so I'll just, if we need to backtrack a little bit, that's fine. But Matt Piscatella, who we talk about, who works for Sakana, which does the sort of North American video game sales tracking, he just put out some information that the Switch is on track to surpass the PS2's lifetime sales in the US. And so obviously when we talk about those numbers we were just talking about of the 140, the 160 million, that's what worldwide sales. But just talking about the US, it's true that the Switch is still ranking third behind the DS and the PS2. But according to Matt Piscatella, it looks like it probably will happen here in the US, that it's only about 1 million units away from surpassing the PlayStation 2. So 1 million sales in the US.
That'll happen.
That'll definitely happen. We're in a different market now, right? Like, that's why. Same with box office. Like for so long, and you see so many sites talk about domestic box office, because for so long that was like the only thing that really mattered. Like all throughout the 80s and 90s, and like even the first decade of the 2000s, right? But it's like now we're in this like global marketplace, and especially when you want to talk about PS2 really did well in Europe, really did well in places like Brazil, large population centers that aren't US, stuff like that, right? And that's where PS2 had legs too. Like you were talking about, Summer, everybody kind of moved on to PS3 here. PS3 was it wasn't a flop in the US, but like for Sony, it was their least selling thing here in the US, right? But PS2 just continued to soar all throughout that low point, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's interesting to see the kind of difference there between the two. Another thing that Matt Piscatella said in this tweet, which was interesting, is that the Xbox Series is holding close to the Xbox 360's pace here in the States as well. And the Xbox Series has had very, publicly had many issues and is not selling as well. And you know what I mean? And everybody talks doom and gloom, but you put it into perspective, that just shows the growth of the gaming industry and the gaming audience at large, right? So I think the industry is healthy right now, and don't listen to anybody trying to spin it otherwise by fudging the numbers to fit whatever agenda they're trying to push.
Last thing here for us to talk about, we got to talk about the Super Switch in light of all this stuff too. But there has been yet another leak, rumor, whatever you want to call it, about the Super Switch or the Switch 2, whatever this successor to the Nintendo Switch is. There's been some discussion on the Family Board's website where people have been following shipping manifests and all these things to figure these things out. Apparently, there is some belief that the charger is going to be more wattage, a 60-watt charger for this device, and also that it's going to have a second cooler or cooling device on it. So again, implying that it is higher spec. And I think there was even somebody out there separate from this or whatever saying that it's about on par with the Steam Deck. Was another like rumor leak that was going around the last couple of weeks. So I don't know if we make anything of this or if this is even really that big of a deal. It's just a chance to talk about this for us too. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on these specific specs or, when we're going to finally hear about this thing?
I think it was interesting to see that like there's a secondary fan that might actually be in the dock, which would kind of support the rumor of like upscaling, but only when in docked mode, which is kind of interesting. But I'm just ready to see what this is.
Yeah, it would make sense, And if it is drawing more power than a Steam Deck currently, I think, what is it? The Steam Deck has a 45-watt charger and the shipping manifests are saying 60-watt here. That would also indicate that it might have a higher resolution portable than the Steam Deck does. Steam Deck is 800p or essentially 720p, just like the Switch in handheld mode. And then if that were the case, that would kind of also lean towards a lot of the rumors we've been hearing about 1080p handheld and 4K docked, right? Because that's enough power handheld to push out that sort of rendering capability and then 4K out there. I would love that. I've also been hearing a little bit of rumblings about some sort of casting to the screen, like wireless docking to the Switch, which I find interesting, but also still very wary of. I try to play like cell phone games sometimes by like casting them through my Chromecast to the TV, and it's a miserable experience that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So unless they somehow figured out some incredible technology that's going to make that work, I can't see that happening, nor would I necessarily want them to return to something like what they did with the Wii U, which was a failure, and I think would just be a bad look to go back to stuff like that. I honestly think they should just stick to making a more powerful system. It's boring, like we talked about. It's not a cool gimmick. It's very un-Nintendo, right? But I think that's what people want right now. And like we just talked about as well in the last story, I don't think Nintendo cares how many units of the Super Switch they sell of like hardware. If they can keep just selling games, you know what I mean? And being the leader in software sales, who cares how many units of a system that you're making, right? I mean, people, if this is truly backwards compatible, people will be buying Switch games regardless of if it's for the Switch Pro or not Switch Pro, the Super Switch or the original Switch, right? So I think the important thing is that they just keep their user base no matter what they're playing on, right? So if it means an iterative console, I think I'm all for that.
Well, that's going to do it then for this long news roundup. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the games we've been playing recently. All right, I've been playing tons of Minecraft because my kid's been home, and that's just something we've been doing. We fired up new Pokemon Snap on a whim to start a second playthrough, but kind of fell off of that, and I'm not going to necessarily bring it back up unless my kid does. Not that it wasn't fun, but the main things I want to talk about are that I was sick and I had been playing the Nintendo World Championships game, and I was Metroid was on the brain, so I fired up Metroid Zero Mission, which I'd never played, on the GBA app on NSO, and had a blast playing through that. I'd always been a little resistant to it because I like the original Metroid and I have fun memories of it. It's like, but I get it now. Holy crap! What an like, it's so good. Like,
Metroid Zero Mission
great.
is like 10 times the game the original Metroid is.
Yeah, it's so much longer, and so like, and then there's the whole extra parts, and oh my gosh, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's my favorite Metroid game.
I can see that. It was really fun. It was a lot longer than I thought, like just like I said. And then when I got to that, I don't know if it's like you get to the Zero Suit portion of it, I was like, oh, this is really different and interesting. And also I see where the franchise is going from here and that sort of thing, with how they do that. And so I played through that and I beat it, and I was looking at the GBA app on NSO, and I was like, I am on board. It's like peak pixel art for Nintendo too, like of all these games. So I fired up Fire Emblem.
Yeah, you did.
Which is just called Fire Emblem, right? But it's the Blazing Blade.
Yes, because it was the first Fire Emblem released in the States. They
in
just
the
called
West.
it Fire
Yeah. So I have probably played 80-90% of this. I have really enjoyed it. It is a little frustrating for me, like where I'm at now, toward kind of late game. I am very happy to play casual in Fire Emblem, and that is not an option here.
Nope.
And you have the rewind feature of NSO, and I use the shit out of that, but you can't, it's limited. Like, it's hard to explain. There are situations where I can't go far back enough, or like, or I I'm going from a save point, so I can't. And I just get frustrated having to restart battles. That's where the game gets me. Like, that's why I like to play on casual. And I'm at a battle that I've restarted 3 times because of surprise enemies coming in from the side, which I just don't love. Like, when I can't like lose a character, you know? And I'm kind of at the point where I don't even care about losing characters anymore, but like, it was one of the ones where you get a game over that was stuck in the bottom of the corner of the map. There's just nothing I could do. Anyway, I'm being negative. I am really enjoying playing through this. I just have to start this battle one more fucking time. And so like, I have to push through.
You know what chapter you're on?
It's like one of the last ones, 28 or something. I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't even know how many chapters there are.
And you're doing Elliewood's story, right?
Yeah, and it is.
Are you going to do Hector
I did
after?
not purposefully look up how much is left, but I was trying to look, because occasionally I have gone and Googled, like, how do I recruit this character? Because I don't want to spend 10 minutes moving the wrong unit across the map.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I saw that I'm on like the second to last chapter or thereabouts. I don't know if there's more content beyond that. I'm not sure, y'all, because like, it's kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, I had a great time, and then now I'm starting to be a little frustrated. So we'll see.
Because Hector mode is like basically the story rewritten from like Hector's perspective.
I don't like Hector.
Whoa!
Also,
whoa!
Least favorite of the main 3. So
let's save it for the Fire Emblem episode.
That we're never getting because David's our editor. Anyway,
that is what I have been playing recently.
I'll go next. Sorry, not to poo-poo on y'all's Fire Emblem talk. I love you guys. I'm realizing now it's all been mostly retro or retro styled games since we talked last. I'll talk briefly. I played so many games at that arcade, Galloping Ghost, when we were there. So I'm not going to obviously talk about all of them. I did take a lot of pictures of everything that I played so I could play them later. So maybe I'll share that in the Discord. But one that I do want to shout out is Monkey Ball, the original Monkey Ball arcade cabinet, which was pre-Super Monkey Ball for the GameCube. I played that there, and I had such a blast playing it. Sadly, the stick was a little janky, right? I have yet to really play in the modern era a version of this arcade game where the stick isn't a little fucked up. It makes sense. It's like a big, tall banana stick on this arcade machine that has had years and decades of people slamming it across the side. So it's like going to be hard to find like a pristine condition copy of Super Monkey Ball, just Monkey Ball for the arcade. That said, this is the best quality machine that I've found in the past 10 years. And I played for hours on this thing. I basically had to like learn a new way to control the game because holding regular straightforward wasn't working. So I had to like kind of rock the whole stage like back and forth in order to get momentum in order to go forward. And I got stuck on the advanced stages. So I beat beginner easily. I got first place on the leaderboard on the arcade machine on beginner. That was not a problem. But then advanced mode, which is like 30 levels, I got stuck on this one level because of the busted stick. And then I tried this level like probably 120 times, like because it's free play. So I could just keep retrying whenever I got the game over, and I could just do continues over and over again. And so often there was like multiple times that like you, Summer, and Kyle, and like Weast and Robo Lettuce, and like other people would come and just like, watch me try to grind this level over and over again. And my friend Vanessa as well, friend of the show, Vanessa Fernandez, was also there, and she was also cheering me on. That was a lot of fun to have an audience, and it actually helped quite a bit.
You were very entertaining.
Yeah, it's hopefully. I mean, there's a video in here. I think if you're watching the video version of what that looked like, but it was. I felt like I was gooning the banana stick.
It's a gooning
tell you
game.
that much. Yeah,
game for gooners.
but anyway, that was a fucking blast. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Other than that, I've been playing retro games. Jumping Flash for the PlayStation. I've had that on in the background of the video version of the podcast here on my little PVM. I've been really enjoying that. That was like the first 3D platformer, basically, for the original PlayStation. It's very charming. I recently talked about SGI Workstation Core and that kind of like early CG look where like people were just modeling things and then throwing them into an environment, and none of it really makes any sense why there's like a kettle or a giant stopwatch or whatever, but they modeled it, so we better use that asset, right? This feels like that. It's a very silly platformer, but it's a ton of fun, and it has aged pretty well because there's not really any other game like it out there. It's really cool. I really recommend Jumping Flash. It's very nostalgic, even though I never played this game when it originally came out. Donkey Kong Country 2, I've been working my way through the Donkey Kong Country series. Again, beat the original Donkey Kong Country recently, kind of working my way through 2. I just play these games all the time. I replay these games in the series all the time. So I'm not going to talk about that too much, but I've been really enjoying that on my Ambernick SP device as well. Also got a little dock back there for my SP, and so I've been playing a lot of retro games because of that, because of this like CRT that I now have and this little dock and like a Bluetooth controller. It's made for a really and like a HDMI to like AV input connector and all the stuff that I have. It's been making playing retro games very fun for me. Last 2 games I want to shout out are retro styled games that I've been playing on my Steam Deck, but I think at least one of these is on the Switch. The first one is Real Web Legends Carter's Quest. This is a kind of Zelda Ocarina of Time like, I think you could say. It's very weird and a little queer, but it's got lots of charm to it and a lot of really cool character design, and the gameplay is really fun. This game is in early access. I think the game is eventually going to be 5 chapters, and right now the early access version is like the first chapter of the game. But it's really cool. I really recommend this game, Real Web Legends Carter's Quest. It's just cool and interesting, and it's like got a lot of, I don't know, it's just a cool game. I don't know what else to say. I really recommend checking it out, and I really like seeing games as they're being made as well, in this way where the developer is very open about what's to come about the game. And then lastly, I want to shout out a 3D platformer called Cavern of Dreams, which I'm playing on my Steam Deck right now, which is a kind of Banjo-Kazooie style collectathon sort of game. There's been kind of a glut of these recently. This is one of the better ones, and I recommend checking this one out. This one's also on the Switch. It's got that N64 low poly aesthetic. Not too much more to say about it other than it's just really well made, and if you like this style of game, then you're certainly going to enjoy this as well. But that's what I've been playing.
Cool. I'll go next. So before I left for Indiana, I was like, I want to play a quick game. I got a couple days. I'm going to just play Stray. It's been on my list for a long time. I'm going to knock it out. So was really enjoying Stray. I had a couple like technical issues. I was playing it on PC. It kept like crashing. Updated my drivers, whatever. Anyway, so one time it crashed and I was like, oh, it's cool. I've been playing for an hour. I'll take a little break. I'll come back. And when I came back, my save was erased. So I played about 70% of Stray, and I can say very good. And I am not going to play 70% again to get the ending. So I looked up the ending and watched that. But cool game. Don't know if I recommend it on PC. Maybe play it on PS5 if you have one, or the Switch when it finally comes out. Also, before I left, David, you had done a stream where we played Nintendo Switch Sports, and ever since then, I have been like on Nintendo Switch Sports online.
Oh, really?
Playing. Yeah, I was like, I was so trash at golf that I was like, I gotta know how to do this. Like, I know I can be better at this. So now I'm like doing pretty good at golf, and that's probably my favorite of all the sports on Switch Sports now. I'm now regularly getting either birdie to bogey in that range on most of the courses, despite wind and everything. So really enjoying that. And then also when I went to Indiana, we played Switch Sports in a basement. So we played, bowling and tennis. And so that was a lot of fun. But while on the road, though, as I was the passenger, I started up Guacamelee 2. It's been on my list for a long time. I've played every other Drinkbox Studios game except for Guacamelee 2, and it's just as good as all of them. This is probably one of my favorite studios right now. Guacamelee was great. I really, really liked this game called Severed that was originally a 3DS exclusive that used the stylus in specific swiping patterns to fight your enemies, but was also like a first-person square by square dungeon crawler, which is also another particular set of games that like scratches a very specific part of my brain. But Guacamelee 2 is great, man. Like probably one of the better Metroidvanias ever made. I probably would put it in my like top 10 of all Metroidvanias. It was just a really tight package, really well paced, really fun to like unlock all the maps. So I 100% of that. Didn't do the Proving Grounds DLC, and I think I'm good. It was very difficult because some of the base game platforming is like too much. It was insane. It took me so long. I got so mad. I had to step away several times, but loved the game. And then I should have been playing our JRPG club game, but my friend convinced me to buy Mass Effect. It was like $6 or $7 on Steam. And I'd only ever played Mass Effect 1 the year it came out, and that was it. So I'm like, now all in. I'm probably about 10 hours into Mass Effect 1, and I'm going to play all the way through as a renegade Jane Shepard. So if you've played the game, you know what I'm in for. I just unlocked all my characters, and I'm exploring like the different parts of the immediate galaxy, but loving it. I'll update y'all as I go along and get into that series. But yeah, that's what I've been playing.
I was also thinking about starting the Legendary Edition since I saw that it was on Game Pass.
It's good, dude. The glow up on Mass Effect 1 is amazing. It's like, the best type of remaster where it looks how you thought it looked. And you like look at the side by side and you're like, oh no, this is much, much better.
Yeah. Well, I'll go next. So I also played a lot of games at the arcade, and I'm not going to talk about all of them, but the one that I do want to talk about is called Death Smiles. I just saw that it was an anime game. Like, y'all know me. I see anime game. I'm like, I'm going to try this. And it starts out, you pick a pretty waifu, and I picked Rosa. She's like this like BDSM fairy looking girl. It's a side scrolling shooter. Not anything like particularly special, or maybe it is because the console version of it has like a 95% like overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam. So, and it's on the Nintendo Switch. So I might actually look into getting it. When I first started playing it, I was like, I'm kind of getting like Bayonetta like vibes. And yes, it is described as a gothic and occult. I might get into Death Smiles now. I don't know. Maybe. Otherwise, gaming on my own time, I'm playing Animal Crossing again. I started just literally, I woke up yesterday and was like, what if I played Animal Crossing? And then when I did wake up, I saw that Kyle was playing Animal Crossing. So I was like, okay, that decides it. I'm going to start playing Animal Crossing. And that was better part of today, that when I wasn't working, I was designing a vacation home for Wilbur of Dodo Airlines, because like he deserves it, right? And because I have his amiibo card. So that works out. I am, of course, still playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, but now I'm more playing it because I am doing my own recordings in game so I can get the footage that I want because I'm making AMVs. Don't get me wrong. I am still focused on my playthroughs, but there are certain interactions that I want from like certain angles. Yeah, you can rip all the cutscenes offline or online, but like I need to like zoom in on the battles at certain points and get certain interactions. So I've been doing that. And I'm, of course, still playing Final Fantasy 14. I am still in A Realm Reborn, but I feel like I'm finally like getting the hang of everything. I'm figuring out like my place in like duties in dungeons, like doing like, you know, what you're supposed to do in an MMO. So like if that interests you, like hit me up. I'm playing that a lot. That's it for me.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. We're going to give some thanks to milkyway.co for doing our website, and thanks to Corduroy for doing our music, and a thank you to all of our patrons over on Patreon. If you're looking for me, Patrick, you can find me online as PDYX.
You can find me at WeBewitched.
You can find me everywhere at Bordan.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We got a website, switchheads.com, and we have a Discord, also a Facebook group, and a Patreon. We'll have links to all three of those in the description of this episode. Whether you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify or watching us on YouTube, please pop into the comments or leave a review, tell a friend about the show, and go to our Patreon, chuck in a buck, and support us. We'd love some monetary support as well, but don't feel that you need to. You'll keep getting the show as you've been getting it forever, whether or not you join us over there on our paid subscription platform. And please, again, join us on the Discord. We love the Discord. We love everybody on the Discord. Not a bad motherfucker in the bunch. Great community all around. Love talking about the shows after we've done them, etc., etc. That was a really long run-on sentence. That's going to do it for this episode on just the news recently. We're going to be back next week with another banger of an episode. So don't touch that dial, baby. You know the drill. Stick around. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Wash your hands. Be safe out there. All the stuff I say at the end of the episode. Why don't you become a newsman yourself? You could be the next Walter Cronkite. Look, you could be the Walter Cronkite of games, is what I'm saying. Look, I'm very tired. I've been tired this entire episode, and now I get to finally go to bed. We love you guys very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.